I didn't play small because I wanted to. I played small because I learned that it was safer and easier that way. Have you ever felt like you're holding yourself back in life? Even when you know deep down inside of you that you're capable of more? Like you don't speak up. You don't go after things in life. You don't take up space or try to take up space, even though deep down in your heart you know that you should. What if I told you that that might not be laziness? That might be something that you learned or adapted to as a kid. What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to Spill the Tea. And today we're talking about something a lot of people don't even realize that they're doing, and that's playing it small. Playing small doesn't always look obvious to everyone. Sometimes it may look like staying quiet when you have something to say, not going after opportunities or chasing your dreams in life. Maybe even downplaying yourself around other people. Most people will sit there and think to themselves, that's just my personality. I'm shy. But a lot of the time, maybe it's not your personality. For myself, this didn't start randomly. Growing up in foster care, I learned very early at a young age that it was easier and safer just to hold myself back. I didn't want to speak up too much, even when I know that I should have. I didn't want to take up space, and I didn't want to ask for anything. I just kind of wanted to hide in the shadows. I didn't want to draw any kind of attention to myself. I just wanted to be seen as little as possible. I wanted to draw zero attention to myself. I even described some of this in my book. I personally remember, even as a kid, my foster mom would try to console me during one of the hardest times in my life. And instead of saying anything, and instead of opening up to her, I would just sit there. I would just sit there very quiet, looking down, not responding to her, not even asking for anything, not even a hug, which I knew that I needed in that moment. I had so many opportunities back then, when I was younger, to say how I felt, but I never did. I just stayed silent, and over time, that silence started to feel like no one was ever there for me. That feeling of neglect started to come over all over again. Because when you grow up in environments where you're overlooked, or you're not fully seen, or you feel like you don't belong somewhere, your brain starts to adapt. You yourself start teaching yourself that if you stay small, you'll stay safe. Over time, that starts to show up in your life. You start hesitating to speak up for yourself. Maybe you're at a job and you know that you're very good at a certain task. And instead of saying anything, you just kind of let it go to someone else. Maybe in life you start second guessing yourself constantly with every decision that you make. Let's say, before you do anything major in your life, like go buy a car or go buy a house or do something incredibly major for your life, or chase after your dreams, maybe you'll sit there and you'll call up all of your friends, 4 or 5 of your friends, and you sit there and you ask them what their advice or what their opinion would be. Maybe you start becoming uncomfortable being seen. I know for myself, it happened at work. I'm a very hard worker, and for once in my life, my job started to recognize that. And as everyone was sitting there congratulating me and clapping and saying how proud they were of me, a part of me started to feel a little embarrassed because too many eyes were on me. But also, sometimes maybe you just hold back even though, you shouldn't. I remember being very young when this happened and showed up in my life. And it was especially known in conflicts in relationships. I would tend to never voice my opinion when it came to certain conflicts in a relationship. Instead, I would just shut down and stay silent, and I would basically just conform to what the other person was saying just to end the argument. And that wasn't because I was incapable of arguing back. It was just because I taught my nervous system that being seen or being heard meant it was risky. The truth is you're not playing small because that's who you are. You're playing small because that is what once kept you safe. What protected you back then, or even might be holding you back now, doesn't have to anymore. So let me ask you something. Have you felt like you were holding yourself back, even though you knew that you were capable of more? You could feel it inside of you. And do you think that that started somewhere earlier on in your life? If today's conversation hit you and you want to understand where these patterns came from on a deeper level, you can check out my book called The Child Called Home. It's available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kindle, Google Books, and Apple Books. It's also available on Reader House as well, too. If you use the code FFSAVE10 on Reader House, you'll actually save 10% off of your entire purchase of everything. I've also partnered with Dubby Energy. This is something that I use daily. It's something that I use while I film, while I write the second book, and while I'm also building this channel. If you want that clean boost of energy without any kind of crash or jitters, you can check them out. And you can also use the link below and put the code in Ernest Maine for 10% off as well too. I also created a guide called Found It at the Right Time to help you reflect and start making sense of your own journey. The link in the description is that as well. If you want more of these real conversations like this, make sure you like, share, and subscribe. Because here on Spill the Tea, we talk about these things that people usually keep inside. I hope to see you guys on the next one. Bye.